One of the components of a server's functionality is that of data storage. Now, there's many different options available when it comes to storing data on a server, and you should be familiar with the options that are out there. So the first would be to store data on a traditional disk drive. So when purchasing a disk drive, some of the specifications that you may want to pay attention to are the RPMs. And what we mean by that when we say RPM, or revolutions per minute, is that a traditional hard disk, even though you don't see it because it's inside, is made up of a bunch of spinning disks. And in fact, on the screen, the picture I have is the inside of a hard disk. So if you took the cover off, this is what you would see. Well, RPM is how many times that disk will spin each minute. The faster it spins, typically, the faster you're able to access the data. You also have the dimensions of the hard disk, so the actual physical size, and based upon the form factor of the server that you're looking to put it in, you may want to pay attention to having a size that fits. Then you have the capacity. How much data can actually be stored on the individual hard disk? You have IOPS, or input-output per second. And so that is a rating of how fast it can transmit data in and out of the hard disk. Seek time and latency has to do with how long it takes for the actuator arm, and that's the little arm that is on the platter itself. If you look at the picture, that arm moves back and forth. And so seek time and latency has to do with how quickly that arm can move to where it needs to get to read the data. And then you need to consider whether it's hot swappable or not, whether you're going to be able to swap out hard drives without having to shut down the computer. Now, there are many different ways that we can connect these hard drives to our server. We have something called Serial Attached SCSI, or SAS, and this, unlike traditional SCSI, which runs in parallel format, uses serial connectivity. We have Serial ATA, or what's otherwise known as SATA. This is a very popular, very common form of connectivity in today's computers. In fact, the picture I have on the screen shows the data and the power connector for a SATA connection on a hard drive. There is traditional SCSI, which is done in parallel, and it was also a daisy chain type formation. We have USB that now allows us to connect all sorts of different types of hard drives. And then there's Fiber Channel. Now, Fiber Channel is a very common interface for shared storage in clustered servers. Now, Fiber Channel is used to connect devices in a high-speed fiber storage network. Now, these networks require a special fiber switch with devices connected to the switch using the Fiber Channel interface. Now, I will tell you that while this provides a very high-speed connection, it does come with some overhead, so you want to keep that in mind. Now, there are some additional storage technologies that go beyond just the traditional hard drive in a computer situation. The first actually is the traditional, which is direct attached storage. No matter how it's connected, whether it's SCSI or SATA or USB or whatever it is, where you actually have your storage directly attached to the server. But we also have network attached storage, or NAS, which is where you have a storage device that is accessible over a TCP/IP network. Then, if you reverse the letters in NAS, you get SAN, which stands for Storage Area Network. Now, a classic storage area network consists of a high-capacity storage device that's connected by a high-speed private network, so separate from the LAN, using storage-specific switch. This storage information architecture addresses the collection, management, and use of the data. So it's a much more sophisticated network-based storage than just your simple network-attached storage device. And then, I always love this one, JBOD. So if anyone ever talks about a JBOD storage solution, JBOD stands for just a bunch of disks. Now, again, this is very typically a component of direct attached storage. Doesn't have to be, but it typically is, where you just have a bunch of disks. They don't match in size. They're not all necessarily the same. And you kind of put them all into a computer. And what you can do is you can create a storage solution where it looks like it's one volume or one drive that's holding a massive amount of data, but it's really a bunch of disks all collected together. Now, this might sound similar to something called RAID that you may have heard of, but the difference here is that RAID is more organized and provides fault tolerance. JBOD is not organized, has no real rhyme or reason, and does not provide fault tolerance. Now, a few other remaining storage technologies that are out there, but they're a bit out of date, would be tape, which is what we used to use traditionally for backups. We have optical drives, which I don't know that I would say that this is out of date, but it's quickly becoming out of date. This would be your CD or DVD drives, and compact flash. Again, I shouldn't necessarily say that that's out of date. And to be more specific, and this is where I'm going to completely contradict myself, not only is it not out of date, but that technology is what makes up the SSD or the solid state drives, which are the hard drives that don't have moving parts. And so as the costs are starting to come down on these drives, they are becoming much more popular. So overall, as you can see, there's a number of different options available when it comes to storing data. So be familiar with those options, know what the advantages and disadvantages are for each, and then you'll have a good storage solution for your servers.